The Roman Empire lasts for centuries. Look how big that map is. It's a massive empire. During the reign of Augustus, the first emperor, from 27 BC to 14 AD, the Roman Empire extended east to the Euphrates River and west to the Atlantic Ocean, north to the Rhine and Danube River, and south across the Mediterranean to the sands of the Sahara. By the 2nd century AD, the empire included an estimated 100 million people of different cultures, faiths, and customs. Generally, the first 2 centuries of the empire were peaceful and prosperous. This period, from 27 BC to 180 AD, is known as the Pax Romana, or Roman peace. Within the empire, business grew as conditions for trade improved. Bandits and pirates were hunted down, and roads and sea lanes were cleared for commerce. Ostia, the mouth of the Tiber River, served as a seaport for Rome. Egypt, North Africa, and Sicily furnished grain for the entire empire. Timber and various farm products came from Gaul and Central Europe. And Spain supplied gold, silver, and lead. Outside the empire, Rome carried on a thriving trade with such distant lands as India and China through the Silk Road. Augustus proved to be a wise ruler. He improved the government that had grown corrupt during the later days of the Republic, especially the provinces. To do this, Augustus created a professional civil service, open to all classes and based on talent. In addition, he established a permanent professional army that was loyal to the emperor and stationed away from the political arena and out in the isolated frontier provinces. A census of citizens was taken and tax rates were adjusted. The program of public works was begun, and roads and bridges were built. Augustus was not successful, however, in his attempts to restore the old ideas of the Roman simplicity and home life. Laws were passed to encourage large families, to strengthen the bonds of marriage, and to limit luxurious living, but with little lasting effect. Augustus made the old religious rituals again a part of the affairs of state by rebuilding old temples and reviving religious festivals. In time, worship of the emperor began, and as the years went by, served as a unifying bond. When Augustus died in 1480, the Senate voted the title of Imperator to his stepson, Tiberius, who proved to be only an adequate ruler. It was during his reign, which lasted until 37 AD, that Jesus was crucified in Judea. From the time of Tiberius to the end of Western Empire in AD 476, Rome was ruled by more than 70 emperors, only a few of whom were very capable. In spite of incompetent rulers, the empire held together until 395 AD. Efficient administrators at many levels of responsibility kept justice and order, and commercial strength helped keep the empire stable. Only when economic decline and social unrest set in did the lack of good leadership at the top seriously weaken the empire. Several of Rome's poor leaders were brutal tyrants who are remembered for their violent and irrational deeds. For instance, Caligula was a madman who killed many people, including his sister, and made his favorite horse a senator? Nero, a judge. Nero judged the most wicked and worthless ruler ever to rule Rome, murdered his wife and his mother. He was also accused of persecuting Christians and setting fire to Rome in 64 AD. A great 9-day catastrophe that destroyed half the city. all blamed on Nero. During the 2nd century AD, however, the empire enjoyed the rule of several competent emperors. Trajan, a Spanish general who ruled from 98 to 117 AD, was an ambitious military leader. Under his rule, the empire reached its greatest extent. His successor Hadrian ruled from 117 to 138 AD. Hadrian made it his policy to strengthen the frontiers. Traveling throughout the empire, he supervised the building of many public works. One of the most famous projects was Hadrian's Wall in Britain, built as protection against the Celtic tribes of Scotland. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled from 161 to 180, was one of the few emperors to win respect of his people. Although he was troubled by invading Germanic tribes, he preferred the quiet study of books and to the blood and brutality of the battlefield. His volume of essays, called Meditations, remains one of the most powerful expressions of the Stoic philosophy, which promoted the view that virtue is the highest good, and that passion should be restrained. Marcus Aurelius' advice was blot out vain pomp, check impulse, quench appetite, keep reason under its own control. It would be wrong to assume that all the inhabitants of the Roman Empire were happy under Roman rule. One of the worst failures of Roman imperial administration was the mismanagement of Judea, the land of the Jews. High taxes, harsh enforcement of the law, and interference in their religion led Jews to revolt between 66 and 70 AD. The Romans brutally suppressed the Jews, destroyed their state, enslaved them, and removed large numbers to other parts of the empire. This is called the diaspora. In 135 AD, after the Jews had made some progress toward returning to Judea, to its former prosperity, the Emperor Hadrian tried to obliterate Jerusalem as a Jewish city and construct a temple to Jupiter on the site of the Holy Temple. This sparked a vast uprising in which at least 500,000 Jews were killed. Hadrian outlawed the Jewish religion and renamed Judea Palestine, the Latin name for the Philistines, who had once lived along the coast many centuries ago. After this uprising was put down, the Jews became a minority in their own country. The center of Jewish life gradually shifted to the diaspora, communities outside Judea, where many Jews already lived, such as Alexandria, Damascus, and Babylon. By the end of the 2nd century AD, attacks on the frontiers of the Roman Empire came more and more often. To meet these threats, Roman leaders doubled the size of the army. The drain on supply of troops and resources brought on an economic crisis that was made more severe by several factors. First, economic decline. Poverty and unemployment were on the rise. In addition, imports, which are goods brought into the empire from foreign lands for sale, began to exceed exports, the goods sent out of the empire for sale elsewhere, creating an unfavorable balance of trade. In an attempt to save some of the valuable metals that were leaving the empire as money, the emperors reduced the gold and silver content of the money in circulation. The replacement of these metals with lead served to devalue or decrease the value of the coin. Because money was worth less now, people charged higher prices. This in turn led to inflation, which is a sharp increase in price caused by a great expansion of the money supply. The inflation experienced throughout the empire caused yet more hardship, more poverty. But there was political instability as well. Business was hurt by crime of all kinds, which in turn was caused by political instability. Meetings of the Senate and the Popular Assembly had become more formalities. These two groups were no longer effective in governing, the state, since the political power was held by the emperor alone, who himself was often at the mercy of the army. Peaceful succession to the throne was rare, and the death of an emperor signaled a free for all struggle. Of the 29 emperors who ruled between 180 AD and 284 AD, only 4 died of natural causes. The others were murdered. The soldiers had the real power to select the new emperor. As a result, emperors often followed the cynical advice of Emperor Septimius Severus, who is said to have told his sons, "Make the soldiers rich, don't trouble about the rest." To keep the legions at full strength, members of the Germanic tribes were recruited, and war captives were forced to enlist in the army. These new legionaries cared for the empire only so long as they were paid. When that ended, they had no more loyalty. However, the empire was still strong and had lasted a very long time. In 248 AD, Emperor Philip celebrated the 1000th anniversary of Rome's legendary founding on April 21st, 753 BC. Two emperors? After a century of decline and civil disorder, two emperors were able to halt, for a while, the disintegration of the empire. The first was Diocletian, who reigned from 284 AD to 305. He set up a full-fledged despotism, which is a government ruled by someone has ultimate power. Harsh laws controlled all business. Constantine was the next emperor, and he enforced even more despotic control over his subjects. He also moved the capital of the Roman Empire from Rome to Byzantium in the Middle East, which he then renamed Constantinople after himself. Diocletian and Constantine halted civil war and economic decline for a time. Yet, as a cure, despotism proved worse than the ills from which the empire suffered. State regulation of business killed individual initiative. A secret police force choked off reform. Trade came to a standstill in many places, and the amount of wealth available for taxation decreased. After the death of Constantine in 337 AD, rivals for the throne butchered one another. The last ruler of a united Roman Empire was Theodosius I. At his death in 395, the empire was divided between his two sons. In effect, the period of Roman dominance and greatness had ended. So, how did Augustus improve the government during Pax Roma? Why was Rome able to survive all the bad rulers? How did Rome mistreat Jews? And what problems weakened the empire between 180 and 284 AD?